My name is Randy Howell, and you're listening to the Faith and Fishing Podcast.
Welcome to the Faith and Fishing Podcast, where every episode I'll bring you an interview with a member of the fishing community, and they'll be sharing their faith stories and fishing memories with you. I'm your host, Cam Steele. Hey y'all, welcome back finally to the Faith and Fishing Podcast. I know it's been a little longer than promised, but we made it through the holiday season and we made it through inventory at work, so thank you for sticking with me. We've got a lot to cover this episode, but first let me start just by saying thank you to you, the listener. I know I say this a lot, but it means the world to me that you're listening. I wanted to say thank you to everyone who has left a rating or a review. That really helps the podcast get found. So if you haven't done that already, make sure you click those stars, and if you leave a review, that's awesome too. That really helps. I read all of them that I can find, and a couple of them have even added a question to what's your favorite. I also wanted to say thank you to the sponsors that we had with us last year, and to welcome the new sponsors to the show. So Savior Outdoors, y'all hear me talk about them all the time. You know they'll save your fishing rods and other gear. And if you use promo code FNFP15 at checkout, it'll save you 15%. Jay's Jigs, I am bound and determined to make the Ned rig a go-to this year, and Jay's Jigs is making that easier. They make lead-free jigs, so it's safe for you, safe for the environment, and they flat out catch fish. Use promo code FNF10 for your 10% discount there. Get Outdoors Pedal and Paddle, awesome paddle and bike shop over in Greensboro, North Carolina. They treated us really well last season, really well. And they have one of the biggest and best kayak shops in the Southeast. So check them out at shopgetoutdoors.com or stop by the shop, see what all they've got. And now to formally introduce the new sponsors joining the family this season. Atollas. Y'all know how clumsy I am. I talk about it all the time, but I can still have expensive sunglasses because Atollas keeps them afloat. They're super light and comfortable, crazy durable. They've even held up to the onslaught of my son, who's almost 11 months old now, and my 4-year-old nephew, who occasionally is lovingly referred to as Captain Destructo. But at atollas.co, that's ATOLLAS.co, use promo code FaithAndFish15, so that's spelled faith, the letter N, fish 15 at checkout, and that'll get you 15% off of your order. Mr. B Lure Company, amazing skirted baits and more. I'm talking swim jigs, flipping jigs, chatterbait style baits, spinner baits, buzz baits, swim blades, which are spinner baits without the jig head and skirt, underspins, and I know I'm probably missing more. At MrBLureCompany.com, that's MRBLureCompany.com, you can use promo code FaithAndFishingPod. It's just like the Instagram handle, FaithAndFishingPod 1x10. So that's faith the letter N, fish the letter N, POD 1x10, and that will get you 10% off of your first order. Also being added to the mix, Quail Ridge Books. I am excited to be adding a non-endemic sponsor to the mix, and I can vouch for the selection and customer service you'll receive there because I might be the one helping you out. There is a link set up. It's quailridgebooks.com/faithandfishing, and I am going to be curating that page. It is still a bit of a work in progress right this second, but as the season goes, it'll get better and better. It's going to have fishing and or faith-related books, Bibles that I recommend, books that are featured on our newest segment, What You're Reading, presented by Quail Ridge Books. So if you listen to the podcast, y'all probably already know how important reading is to me by now. Having spent the majority of my post-college life working at a bookstore of some sort, reading is how I learn and explore new ideas. There are a ton of fishing and or faith-related books out there, and I am going to be reviewing them in this new segment. And I am thankful to Quail Ridge Books for making that happen. Speaking of new, we are also going to be having a new show this season. The first Tuesday of every month at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, starting February 1st. So if you're listening to this the day it comes out, that's a week from today, we are going to be having Faith and Fishing Live. So we'll be starting out over on Instagram. Hopefully we'll be able to set it up to have some guests, but if nothing else, I'll be up there with y'all answering your questions and having some topical discussions, and y'all will be helping me pick the topics. I'll be continuing to ask my story to send me topics that y'all want to discuss, and if you miss one, don't worry. I'll be recording them and posting them as podcast episodes, so no matter what, you'll get a chance to listen. A couple other announcements. At the beginning of January, I was on the Bass and Brews podcast with Paul Roberts. He's at Paul Heels on Instagram, and we were just talking about growing up country, fishing, content creation, and out of that conversation came this idea of me maybe volunteering as a chaplain for one of our local kayak fishing tournament trails. And after some praying about it and brainstorming what that would look like, I am now the chaplain for the Central Carolina Kayak Fishing Tournament Trail, and I am excited about the opportunities that will bring about to be able to have some deep conversations and just love on some people. So excited about that, and I will have links to the Bass and Brews episode in the show notes as well, so that you can definitely check that out. All right. Holy cow, that was a long intro. I think it's time to jump into Learn from My Mistake. Get Outdoors Pedal and Paddle in Greensboro, North Carolina offers a wide range of products and services designed to help protect the environment and enhance the time people spend enjoying the outdoors. With an expansive year-round inventory of kayaks, SUPs, bikes, kayak fishing accessories, paddling clothing, biking accessories, and more, Get Outdoors has established itself as one of the top paddle sports and biking shops in the Southeast. They also offer a wide range of kayak safety and technique courses to get you comfortable in your new boat. They'll even get it rigged up for you. Stop by the shop in Greensboro, North Carolina, or check them out at shopgetoutdoors.com. So this is an older story from the brief amount of time I was paddling on the Catch 120 from Pelican. It paddled so poorly that I put a big skeg on the bottom to help with tracking. And I have to say it did help, but it was too big. To get in and out of my favorite fishing spot, I had to take it off, then paddle over the super shallow area I was in, and then put it back on, which meant I had to get out of the kayak, into the water, lift the kayak up, line the skeg up, and put it in. It was quite the ordeal. So one, if you're adding a skeg, make it a shallow one that doesn't have to come off all the time. But there was another mistake I made that we need to learn from that happened during this process. If you follow me on Instagram, you've seen how bad I overdo it when it comes to accessories on my kayak. I have stuff sticking out all over the place. So when I have to get in and out, I don't always make it super easy on myself. There was one particular outing when I had gotten out to take the skeg off, had paddled over that shallow area. When I got done with my fishing, was coming back towards the main lake, I had to get back over that area again. So when I went to get out to put the skeg back on, I had to move some of the rod holders out of my way. While I was doing this, I was drifting, and I wasn't paying attention to where I was. I slid right off the kayak and into the water, only to realize that I was no longer in 6 inches of water. I was now in 4 feet of water. Now, I was in no danger of being over my head or anything like that. But when you are caught off guard like that, it can easily end up being a very bad day, especially if it's cold. Either way, getting wet right before a long paddle isn't comfortable, and when you have to get back on your kayak without putting the skeg back on, you end up with a rather miserable paddle back. So if you're going to be doing the skeg route, I think it would be worth it to go the rudder route instead. But if you ever need to get out of your kayak, pay attention to where you are so that there aren't any unpleasant surprises. All right, we are going to have a quick word from a sponsor, and then we are going to turn on the product spotlight and talk about something other than bass fishing for a minute. With 30 years of experience of handcrafting lures under his belt, Mr. B of Mr. B Lure Company is making high-quality spinnerbaits, buzzbaits, jigs, underspins, swim blades, and more right here in the U.S. All of his skirts are hand-tied, and all of his baits feature a baked-on powder paint, all metal components, and only Owner and Gamakatsu hooks. All of his baits come in a variety of colors, and if you purchase a bait in the Battle Shad color, 30% of the proceeds go to the Wounded Warrior Project. To see the quality for yourself, go to MrBLureCompany.com, that's MRBLureCompany.com, to place your order and use promo code FAITH, the letter N, FISH, the letter N, POD 1X10 at checkout to save 10% on your first order. I know that I and most of my guests do a lot of bass fishing, and that's a lot of the fishing that we talk about on this podcast. But I love fishing for a variety of species, and one of those that I have recently fallen in love with is carp. I have really enjoyed chasing carp from my kayak, and there has been one company that has taken my carp fishing game to the next level, and that is Wicked Carp Company, focusing on Euro-style carp fishing, which is really interesting in how very different yet very similar to other styles of fishing that it is. Wicked Carp Company makes some killer baits. They make boilies, tiger nuts, glug, and more. So boilies are a prepared bait that is full of attractants and nutrients for the carp. Tiger nuts are a flavored nut that gives the carp something to chew on. And glug is a sticky liquid attractant that you can soak your bait in to make it even more likely to get picked up. So their baits come in a variety of flavors. My favorite is the Tutti Frutti, and that is because my main carp fishing lake and the creek that feeds into it have a whole lot of persimmon trees around it. So during the fall, those persimmons fall into the water and they are the main forage for the carp, and those Tutti Frutti boilies are an absolute winner that time of year. I struggled catching carp until I started using Wicked Carp Company, and the owner, Neville, is a really awesome guy. He even does guided carp trips down in Texas where he's putting clients on massive grass carp, common carp, and smallmouth buffalo. But yeah, that is Wicked Carp Company. Links will be in the show notes, but you can check them out at wickedcarpcompany.com. And if you want to learn more about the Euro-style carp fishing, or just how to rig up boilies and how to use them, check out the Carp Fishing Podcast. They're out of the UK. They're once a month, but they're long episodes, but they are worth it. They are awesome. So, all right. So now it is time for our newest segment, What You Readin'. What You Readin', presented by Quail Ridge Books, Raleigh, North Carolina's trusted community bookstore. Welcome to What You Readin', presented by Quail Ridge Books. So what I am going to be doing for this segment is I am going to give you some reviews of books that I recommend that pertain to fishing and or faith, and there are a ton of them, but I figured what better way to get started than to talk about a book that has a lot to say about both. So last year I had author Dan Flowen on the podcast to talk about his book Fisherman's Apprentice, The Making of a Fisher of Men. Now at the time, I had not read the book yet. I've read it now, and it sits on our shelves here at Quail Ridge Books with my staff pick in it. One of my favorite things about this book is the voice that is written in. It's not a journalistic approach of a journalist writing a story or spinning a story. It's not a novelist trying to be literary. It's very, very raw, very vulnerable, very much what you would expect when a guest speaker from your own congregation at church steps up to the pulpit. This is a man telling his story of what happened after he was told he was dying of cancer and had around 8 months to live. His struggles, his pain, his triumphs. Dan could very easily have left it at that, though. This could have been a book about cancer and his fight with cancer. While there's definitely a lot of talk about cancer in this book, this isn't a cancer book. It's not even a book about a fight with cancer. This is God's story. This is Dan's recollection of having God work in and through him and changing him, growing him into a better father, husband, businessman, person. One thing I was surprised about was how much there is in this book for business people out there, especially those who are turning their business over to God and doing business the way they are feeling called by God instead of just what makes sense on paper. Overall, I was challenged to grow as a person and to do hard things, like finding an accountability partner to have hard conversations with, to journal, and to become better myself. Check it out at quailridgebooks.com/faithandfishing, along with some of my other recommendations. Links will be in the show notes. If you click on the the link that says All Things Faith and Fishing and scroll down to Quail Ridge Books. It'll take you right to it. And I look forward to sharing this side of my passion with you. Now, I know you're shifting in your seats with anticipation to get this episode's guest introduced. So let's have a quick word from our sponsors and then get Mr. Greg Ferris introduced. Savior Outdoors gives me confidence that no matter what happens, what I take on the water is coming back home with me. With retrieval devices for fishing rods, bow fishing bows, action cams, and even one that can be attached to your other gear, they've got your whole arsenal covered. When one of these devices goes in the drink, it releases a float attached to your gear by 60 feet of line so you can get it back, and the pressure-sensitive filter means that you don't have to worry about raining or dips in the water while landing a fish. At SaviorOutdoors.com, that's SAVUR Outdoors.com, you can use promo code FNFP15 to save 15% and try them for yourself. Atollas, based out of Charleston, South Carolina, is an eyewear accessory and gear company focused on enhancing your time on the water. Their floating sunglass retainers are the most technically advanced around. Over 5 years of engineering, testing, and exhaustive feedback from paddlers, anglers, and watermen have resulted in a patented design in a class of its own. They're incredibly light and comfortable, built for durability, sport a sleek, minimal design, float virtually all brands and models of sunglasses, and they're backed for life. So if you break them, Atollas will replace them. No questions asked. Whether you're fishing, kayaking, or boating, Atollas will save your shades from the drink. Head on over to atollas.co to check out their gear and use promo code FAITHANDFISH15, that's faith the letter N, fish the number 1, 5, at checkout to save 15% on your order. A little while ago, I saw someone had followed me on Instagram, so I followed them back and went to their page to look at their page and was met with the most unique watercraft I'd ever seen. For starters, he wasn't pedaling, he was paddling with his feet. It was such a unique design, I had to ask some questions, so I peppered him with questions, and Greg was awesome and answered all of them. Since then, he has been on the final cast with Josh and Brad over on the Paddle and Fin Network, talking about his boat, which is called the Trident Explorer, and has been to a few shows and expos, and we had to have him on to talk about how faith has played a part in the development of this boat. So allow me to introduce Greg Ferris of Adventure Designs Watercraft. Greg, man, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me.
Absolutely, man. So to get us started off, kind of introduce yourself to our listeners and just tell us who Greg Ferris is.
Well, Greg Ferris is living in Muscatine, Iowa, right off the Mississippi River. Just a gorgeous area. I think I love it the most because I know when it's spring and when it's fall just from looking up in the sky and seeing all the birds going one way or the other. And I'll let everyone just guess which way I like better.
For sure.
The spring's better. I'll spoiler alert. I actually grew up in Chicago and in the suburbs, and went to Iowa State to get a degree and never went back. Just loved Iowa, and met my wife while I was there, and it's been great. So I've been doing product development my whole life. I think I was about 10 years old when I realized that's what I wanted to do. I think I was in the basement with a tennis ball can and an electric motor with a propeller trying to make a submarine when I was like 10 years old, and my parents were probably like, oh my God, what have we created?
That's awesome.
Anyway, I've kind of done all kinds of tinkering things growing up, like building things and developing products has always been my passion. When I was in college, a buddy and I decided we wanted to build a hovercraft, and built a hovercraft, and I thank God that I didn't kill myself with that thing. It was a distinct possibility. And I built an airplane that I still fly today, although my project to build the Trident Explorer has taken away almost all of my time from that. But anyway, this passion for fishing's always been there. That was hatched really through camping as a kid. We went camping usually in northern Indiana, and I went the camping for me was just about the fishing, and I always enjoyed getting out there. And I remember, kind of idolizing this one friend of my dad's who would go to this campground and catch, nice bass. And at that time, all I knew was casting a bobber with a worm and catching bluegills. And I went there one weekend, and I am going to catch a bass. I had never caught a bass, and I was fishing with big boy lures, and I fished. We got to the campground on Friday. I fished all evening until dark. Didn't catch one. Got up early on Saturday, fished all day long, and at dusk, I was fishing a plastic worm, and I hadn't caught one all day long, and I was dejected, and I was like, I made a disgusted last cast. Let's see one catch this, and I reeled it in as fast as I could reel, and pow, something just hammers this thing, and it's big, and I get it to the shore, and I realize I had caught a 30-inch northern pike out of this little lake in northern Indiana, and it broke the line in the shore, and I literally jumped in the lake and threw the fish up on the shore. And I think that's the moment when I became like wholeheartedly hooked on fishing. right there.
Absolutely.
It's just that you never know what's going to happen. You tell yourself one more cast, because you never know, that one more cast is maybe when the magic happens.
I always say that last cast turns into one more fish turns into I can't stop now, the fish are biting.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And sometimes, when you get in those moments, it's super hard to quit. You just never know, I had an experience where I was up in Canada fishing with my dad and my son, and we had a portage, and my dad didn't feel like dealing with the portage, so my son and I went down to this portage lake, and we went down there, and we were killing them. It was just crazy, and the way we were catching these fish, it was at the bottom of this waterfall, and we had been northern fishing with spinner baits and buzz baits, and I switched over to fish kind of at the edge of the fast water with a jig and plastic. And my kid starts throwing the spinner bait like up into the rocks of the waterfall, and I'm like, "What are you doing?" It's like, you just want to lose your spinner bait. First cast, he catches like, probably 19, 20-inch walleye. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And he just proceeds to catch fish after fish. So we go up and we grab my dad. It's like, went to the cabin and said, "Get in the boat. I'll carry you across the portage if I have to." And then we went back to the same spot and only caught a few. So like, you just never know when they're going to be on, when they're going to be off. It's just kind of that's what I think is so engaging about fishing and what keeps people excited about it. You just never know, good, bad, or ugly.
Absolutely. And where along your fishing journey did you decide to start Adventure Designs Watercraft?
It's fairly recent. So we're about 3 years into this thing. I discovered kayak fishing probably, I think, about 7 or 8 years ago. I had purchased a small, just really, really basic fishing kayak, and using it the first time I used it, I went for a swim. And then I got a little smarter about how you move and how you don't. I'd go out there, and sometimes it was just like, this is the best thing ever. But then there'd be other times I go out there, it's like, man, this is driving me nuts. Like, especially if there's any wind. So I sort of set up parameters. Like, if I looked at the weather, if there's a wind over 10 miles an hour, forget it. It's just the frustration factor is going to outweigh the fun factor, and I'm only out there to have fun. I'm not, I'm not fishing for, if I don't catch something, I don't eat tonight. That sort of stirred the product development guy, or I'm a product nerd. I'll just go ahead and admit it. That stirred that inside me, and I just started thinking about what could a person do. And my first thought was, how do I make a kayak as we know and love it today, that archetype? How can I make it hands-free? And I actually did build a prototype, and when I tested it, I literally couldn't make any forward movement. It didn't work well at all. And from that experience of building that prototype and testing it, it kind of was a realization that these two things just aren't going to work well together. And kind of the two things I'm talking about is my thought process was, pretty much always is, simple always wins. And I don't want to introduce something that's like really complicated, that is going to be prone to breakage, expensive to build, intensive to work with, and then cause you to lose some of what makes kayak fishing what you want to do, rather than fish from a boat with say an outboard motor on it, or a bass boat or something like that. I embarked on building a boat, and that was an entirely different experience. And it was intellectually it was really interesting, because I had never designed a boat before. But there's all kinds of aspects to this thing. And my first iteration of it, you can see, if you go to my website, there's a tab called The Story, and you can see a bunch of pictures where I tell the story of this development. And I'm not going to bore everybody by trying to describe every nook and cranny, but the first prototype was made out of pink styrofoam that you buy from Menards, that I shaped into the shape of the prototype that I had designed in CAD, and through like a layered, built up layers method. And it was December or January, I don't remember which. It was the middle of the winter. It was freezing cold, and no open water. So I talked to a friend of mine that I bowl with, and he manages a Holiday Inn Express, and he said, "Is there any way that I could put my boat under your pool to test it?" And he's like, "I think we can make it happen." So there's a picture of me floating on the first prototype in a Holiday Inn Express pool.
That's awesome. So I have to ask, how different is designing a boat from designing a hovercraft?
A lot different. There's just unique problems. At the time I built a hovercraft, I was in college, and I had not, through experience, you learn how to do things much, much better, and a lot of times it's not, you learn from your mistakes, and you learn from the things that you did well and the things you did poorly. And, one of the things I really learned from that experience of building the hovercraft was, weight. Weight is something when you're building something, an ounce here, 5 ounces there, it adds up to too heavy pretty quickly. So you have to really think about weight on something where weight matters, from kind of a part by part basis. So that was one of the key learnings from that. But hydrodynamics and aerodynamics are not too dissimilar to each other. So there was some crossover there. At one point, I actually wanted to be an aeronautical engineer.
Oh, that's awesome.
So, but then I found out I'd probably have to live in California, and I'm like, never mind. I'll be a mechanical engineer.
I hear you. So, so let's talk about the boat a little bit. So, it's called the Trident Explorer, and I'm not going to get into every single nook and cranny, because you were just on the final cast over with Brad and Josh on the Paddle and Fin Network. So, definitely want to encourage anyone listening to go check that one out if you want to really get all the nuts and bolts of this boat. They did an awesome job with it. Love those guys over there. Want to make sure we spread the love as much as we can. But yeah, so let's talk about the boat. It's the first thing you notice is the shape. It looks, it's new. It's different. Was that out of necessity, or was that out of just trying to be different and new? Were you trying to come up with something that nobody else had, or were you just trying to make something that worked for what you wanted?
Yeah, I think if I'm being completely honest, when I started working on it, I was working on a boat for me. It really wasn't. It wasn't like a company deciding, okay, we're gonna poll the market and understand from market research what the gaps are, and then we're gonna design a boat that fills those gaps. I had an experience that I wasn't happy with, and I knew a way to make it better. And I started down that path, and I got to somewhat of a functional design, and getting to that design was like highly functional. The shape kind of is driven by the functionality of it. And it created some real significant issues from a visual point of view, because earlier prototypes, when I showed it to people, they were like repulsed by it. This does not look good. And if somebody's going to, be interested in something, it has to look good. So when the decision was made that, hey, this thing works really, really well, and it's really novel, there's nothing else like it, this should be a product that we can market, that's when, the decision was to start worrying about, number one, the market research side of things, and understanding of, are the problems that I see problems that other people see. So I spent 6 months just going around the lakes, stalking random people, making my family super uncomfortable. Because we'd drive by a lake. I'm like, hey, there's someone out in the kayak. I'm going to go talk to him. And they're like, you don't even know this guy. Yeah, but I'm going to soon.
That's awesome.
Which is, if anyone doesn't know what an engineer's DNA is, that's not it. And that's not really my DNA either. So that was part of the experience of this whole project was, kind of a growth thing for me personally, was just being more open to talking to people that I don't know, and, learning more about them and having those conversations. So
absolutely.
So from that market research, that's when, it became clear, like, hey, there's really something here.
Right.
It's a fishing kayak is a niche, and this is a niche of that niche. So that's something you have to respect. And when you have the archetype of a kayak is, let's just say, very well understood. The market is flooded with kayaks right now. So making it look different was necessary. Otherwise, it'd just be lost in the crowd. So we wanted it to look different. And the designs that, the aesthetics were driven by me, I just couldn't get it there, that over the hump. So I worked with an industrial designer, and he was super helpful to take the design from, a functional design that was kind of an ugly duckling to something that was still functional, but yet when you looked at it, you saw a boat, number one. Like, you didn't wonder, like, what is that thing? And number
Right.
two, it has a certain level of, I think it has a little bit of a sexiness to it, where it has really cool lines that kind of give you a little bit of reminisce of John boat meets bass boat meets kayak.
Yeah, for sure. So, to our listeners who may not be looking at the boat right now, so it's got this big wide back end, and that's where the seat is. That's where like a lot of the storage is. And then it's got a narrow part that sticks out to the top, to the front, and that is where the paddle drive is. And I want to talk about this paddle drive because you're actually using a paddle with your feet. So I wanted to talk about how that worked and what kind of how did that idea come about? Two, what kind of learning curve is there? Is it intuitive? Like, does it take a little bit to get used to? Talk about that for a second.
Yeah. I mean, it originated from really just the mindset of what's the simplest way to solve this problem. And in the case of the propulsion, we already have the simplest way. It's a paddle. We know it works, and people know how to use a paddle. The problem is when the idea of a kayak and a canoe were thought of, you were doing it to just get across a body of water or down a river. You weren't doing it to primarily catch fish. And to catch fish, you need your hands free. So you have to alternate between paddle and fishing. And, the solution that came about, maybe 8 years ago, maybe, I'm not exactly sure when pedal drives hit the market. When that solution hit the market, it said, hey, we're hands free. But my take on that was, but you made some pretty big trade-offs there. You have something that isn't truly hands-free because you have a rudder. So you still have usually like a lever, or you have to, some people do hook the foot pegs up to the rudder. So you don't have to use your hands for the rudder. But you still have something where you have propeller or fins that are hanging significantly below the boat, so your draft is significantly more than what it was before you added that to it. And you have to worry about getting that whatever that is down there wrapped up in weeds, and that's another key thing with a kayak, is that you're able to run through skinny water that's full of weeds to get to another spot that's open on the other side, that sort of a thing. So you're losing something there. It basically is really good to get you from point A to point B, but not so great for the actual act of fishing. The other trade-off is when you have the paddle in your hand, you can move your boat forward and backward, and you can pivot it around, the point, by the point, just with the way that you use the paddle. With a pedal drive, you have to be moving forward or backward for the rudder to do something to turn you. So you really can't ever pivot. Well, losing the ability to pivot is a real problem for fishing. So you have to kind of do a whole bunch of 3-point turns to sort of get yourself to change directions while you're fishing. And I do that all the time. So I see that as a pretty significant disadvantage. So with the foot operator paddle, it's very intuitive to use because it's the exact same motion, and you're just translating what you are accustomed to in your hands to your feet. And I think the easiest way for me to describe that to people in a credible way was the way that I had the video shot. So if you look at the video on the webpage, and a lot of the videos where you see the same guy on the boat. He's in the promotional video. That's the first time he was ever on that boat. And if you look at my YouTube page, there's some really old videos that he was in with one of the early prototypes, and he spent maybe 20 minutes on that. So he looks like he's been on the thing his whole life. Can I promise you that you're going to look like you've been on it your whole life the first time you're out on it? No. I mean, just it's a level of athleticism that I think that he has, where he was so natural, so quick. But I have not seen anybody that gets on it and is just fumbling around hopelessly. Like some people kind of have an impression that it is going to be difficult, but I've really not had that experience.
Awesome. Awesome.
Does that answer your question about the paddle?
Yeah, absolutely.
Ran around it a lot there, but
yeah. Does it wear on like the hips and the knees and stuff, or is it pretty smooth like riding a bike?
It's pretty smooth. To mitigate the stress on your joints, the footrests are mounted to the paddle through rubber bushing or bushings, so they actually can flex. So when you're paddling, your feet are able to move independent of that paddle shaft. So when you go through that arc, your ankle isn't having to sort of trace that entire motion.
Gotcha.
So saving your body that motion and sort of decoupling it so it's not directly applied back to you just helps you feel fresher longer. And honestly, for paddling, one of the things that was pretty common in market research is some people go out on a lake and paddle for exercise. They're generally not in a fishing kayak to do that. Those folks are generally in a two-ring kayak, one that's built for speed because it's just more satisfying to cover more water if you're out there to, paddle for an hour for exercise. And the outcome of that for me was, okay, we want to make it really easy for someone to put a motor on this thing and make it so that they don't have to spend a lot of money to put a motor on this thing. So if their interest is really, how do we get out to my fishing spot as quickly as possible and then have an awesome way to fish when I get there, that we have a great solution. So there's a transom integral to the hull that's set up so you can just drop a really basic trolling motor like a Minn Kota that you could buy at any retail store on there. So, an inexpensive motor, and that gives you the opportunity to very easily zip out to where you want to go. I've also since experimented with a 2.5 horse Suzuki outboard motor, and that gets you going faster, obviously, and that's a really easy motor to deal with because the gas tank is integral to the motor. The whole thing is only 29 pounds, so it weighs probably less than half of the weight of a trolling motor battery. So honestly, if I'm going to go fish like in a river where I need to use the motor a lot, I will opt for the outboard to get me to where I want to go. And say, if I'm fishing the Mississippi and I'm fishing a wing dam, I found that I can motor to the wing dam and then I can still use my paddle to sort of negate the current to stay in a position to fish a wing dam. I'll add, that depends on the amount of current and, where you're at relative to the main channel and all of that. You're not gonna paddle against the main channel in the Mississippi River in the boat. You're gonna lose that battle.
For sure.
I want to make outrageous claims.
Absolutely. So kind of give us like the really, really quick version, the list of the features of this boat, because it's got a lot of really awesome features. And we could probably spend the next 3 or 4 hours going into all of them, but we are almost 30 minutes in, and we haven't even touched on Faith yet. So I want to make sure we get a chance to do that. So kind of give us the rundown of what this boat has to offer.
Yeah, I think most succinctly, we've really already talked about the drive system. You know, that it's simple. The only thing I would add to it is that it's essentially just sitting in a pivot nest. So if you want to pick the paddle up, if you felt the need that you wanted to use the paddle to push off of something, or if you were standing up and you wanted to paddle while standing up, you could just pick the paddle up and use it like a stand-up paddle.
That's awesome.
So it gives you a lot of flexibility. It's really just a paddle with a couple footrests on it.
And the paddle is included with the boat, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all one. So the paddle it's essentially a standard 8-foot paddle that has a 2-foot center section that's custom to the boat that the footrests are mated to. So just to make sure everything works smoothly, we include the whole thing.
And for transportation, does that paddle come apart into 2 pieces, or?
It actually comes apart in 3 pieces.
3, okay.
So the center section, that little 2-foot section with the footrest, is one section, and then the outer 2 is essentially what would normally be one paddle. You could stick them together and make an 8-foot paddle out of it.
Okay. I'm sorry, I said the quick round, and I'm keep asking questions. I'll try to let you get through it.
No, it's all good. And then, the other really unique feature comes from the fact that the hull is a tri-hull design. So it's not tri-hull in the sense like a lot of people say tri-hull, where the hull just has some ridges in it. It's actually 3 separate hulls going through the water, where the overall width is 48 inches. And the reason it's 3 separate hulls is that we wanted to decrease the frontal area that's going through the water. So that's what's creating the resistance to your movement. So if you had something that was 48 inches wide going through the water, that would create a ton of resistance. So that shape of the hull is reducing the resistance. It still is a lot of boats to put through the water. So, just to be clear, this is not going to be confused with some little carbon fiber or skinny boat, that one paddle and you're zinging along for minutes at a time. It's a fishing kayak, and it has the trade-offs that all fishing kayaks have as far as paddling. So those true paddlers out there will be insulted. So, I go to some shops, and if the shop owner is like a diehard paddler, has been a paddler his whole life, some of those guys kind of look at fishing kayaks as somewhat of a sacrilege to their sport.
Right.
But the wide hull, what that really is doing for you is essentially those outer pontoons are acting as almost like you can think about them as built-in outriggers. So you'll see people putting outriggers on their kayaks, trying to give them more stability because they just want to feel more secure on the water. And this, design gives you that security that's just part of the boat. And when you have that stability, it affords you the opportunity to lift the deck of the boat up farther off the water, and then the seat up higher off the deck than any other boat out there that's similar. And that elevation is really key for comfort, because it gets your legs into more of like a normal seated position. So in a past life, I designed office chairs, so I know a little something about ergonomics and the shape to get somebody into a chair that they can sit in for an extended period to be comfortable. That being said, the most important thing for comfort is to be able to move. And a lot of times when you sit in a kayak, you're locked into one position. With the Trident, you can sit in the seat, you can flip the seat up. This is something you're really just going to have to see on the internet images. You can flip the seat up out of the way, up to where it leans up to the back, and stand in front of it. And then you can also just kind of perch on the edge of the seat. So the edge of the seat has crossbar that allows you to sit right on that front edge that is surprisingly comfortable. And when you hook your heels on the gunnels of the boat, you can sit there, and if you're in a situation where you can pitch at an area for a while, that's a pretty nice place to be. So, I think that kind of covers the comfort side of things, and the other side of having the width to the hull is it gives you all this room for storage. So you're going to see all kinds of compartments. There's a cup holder for a can or a bottle size. There's a cup holder on the other side for like a thermal cup. There's recesses for a cooler, for tackle boxes, so that plain old 8700 series tackle boxes, kind of the most common tackle boxes will fit directly in there, and then bungee down. Little pocket for plastics, your pliers, and then with the boat being fiberglass, you're able to customize it, with rails and a lot of different things that are out of the market. We don't try to predict what you're going to want to do with it. We can do customizations if you want us to do them, or you can customize it yourself. It's totally up to you. It's there's a little bit of a blank canvas. We include a couple rod holders and a dry storage bin, and then the rest is sort of up to your taste of what you would find most effective.
Awesome.
I think the last thing I'd cover would be, you'll notice that there are integral wheels. And the purpose of the integral wheels is that you're able to get to where you're going to fish, put all of your gear on the boat, get it totally ready to fish, pick up the paddle in one hand, pick up the handle of the boat on the other, walk to the water, put it in the water, and go fish. So there's no trips back and forth to get out of the water. That was something that I saw a lot during the market research phase, was how long it took people before and after fishing to, just get things set up and get things put away at the end. And that's just all time that you don't get done with your day of fishing and get home and say, how did it go? Well, I had a great time setting the boat up for a half an hour. That's like, there's not a lot positive coming out of that. So
right.
How do we minimize that was the thinking. So,
and
so the wheels going through the water, they create some drag, but you'll notice they're really narrow to minimize that drag. So you're getting the benefit with, trying to minimize the cost as much as possible to it.
Absolutely. And the integral wheels have to make it so nice because you don't have to have like a third party or aftermarket cart that you're trying to make it fit a kayak that it was never meant to fit, or you don't have to pick the boat up onto and off of it. That is the worst. I have a sea tug, and I don't have a lot of good things to say about it. So,
Gotcha.
But yeah, so like I said, I definitely want to dive into the faith side of things. Kind of, in a nutshell, give us your faith story. What is it that you believe, and how was it that you came to believe it?
Yeah, I think I was blessed to grow up in a family where faith was something that I think I always saw in my grandmother and my parents. So it was something that was fairly second nature, and it wasn't something that I had to kind of go discover on my own. I was taken to that, which I appreciate. Maybe you don't appreciate it when you're a kid, but I guess when you get older, you understand that your parents had a choice and they made the right choice. I think through the course of your life, you have different seasons, right, of where you're at with your faith, and this whole experience of trying to build a company, you know, has really showed me how vulnerable you have to make yourself for these types of things to happen. And when you see somebody doing something, whether you see them singing or you see them, you know, trying to make the better burger, or, you know what I mean? Like they're putting themselves out there. And I guess I never really respected how much people are putting themselves out there and how easy it is for people to take. It's a lot easier to take somebody down than it is to build them up.
Yeah, for sure.
'Cause you're taking a bigger risk when you support somebody than you are by making fun of them. I guess that's more of a societal thing, but that's the reality, at least in my view. But, you know, from a faith point of view, I've never really had a true fundamentalist point of view to life. I think, you know, we're here in our free will, and you know, God is there to guide us and to help us get through this journey. And I just try to get better. There's certain things, you know, that you know, I can certainly be more godlike in this way. You know, I wish I had more patience than what I do. And I try to have more patience, but sometimes I sink and sometimes I swim on that one.
I hear you.
A pun. I'm a pun guy. I try to keep it. Try to keep the dad humor to a minimum.
Oh, bring it on! Bring it on.
So, but it's when you asked me the question, you know, when we were initially talking, because, you know, I think it was like my second post on Instagram that I had just gotten into Instagram, like just started when you messaged me, and you know, we had a nice conversation, and then you introduced me to the other guys, and I was like, well, this is really cool. I mean, we had a really nice conversation for you not knowing me, and it's not easy to find that, you know. So I really appreciate that you know, took the time and that you took the interest to learn more. So when you said, you know, well, are you into that faith thing? I thought my first thought when you sent me that message was like, well, if you're starting a business, so you're not into that faith thing, you're in big trouble, you know, because if you think you're going to do this all by yourself, you are so deluded. It's not even funny. It's such a amazing journey of like making connections, you know, to make something happen. There's just no way that anyone can believe that you could just get there all on your own. You know that you know, God is behind you. And, you know, you're just doing your best to follow. I know this weekend, this story, and this is 100% true, and it's still like, it makes me laugh. It didn't necessarily make me laugh initially, but anyway, I went to a sports show this weekend in Cincinnati, the Cincinnati Fishing Expo, displayed the boat, and drove to Cincinnati. And I was driving alone to Cincinnati towing my trailer with two of my boats, and then another company called Caniac. They're molded up in Ackley, Iowa. I saw Caniac boats at a sports show a couple of years ago. Jeff Kurth owns the company, and you know, met him at the sports show, and I'm like, you know, I'm making a boat. I need somebody to make a fiberglass hull. Clearly, you know how to make a fiberglass boat. Are you interested in making a hull for me? That connection was one of the most important connections I made. So anyway, I mean, when I had the opportunity to have more space in the booth, I'm like, hey, you want me to take some boats up there? So I took some of his boats up there. So I've got this trailer full of boats, and it was fun. So anyway, his display is this kind of steel tubes that the boats sit on, and I put a cover or like a drape over the top of it. So I set the booth up. We did the show over the weekend. But anyway, I guess I've left out one detail. So I'm driving down the road, and I was thinking to myself all the time and the money that's been spent to get to this point, you know, and this is sort of a moment, right? You're putting it out there and you're seeing like, okay, what's the interest look like? You know, I said a prayer and I said, you know, please God, just let me sell something. You know, I had hats and T-shirts with me. You know, it's like, if it's a T-shirt, let me sell a T-shirt. You know what I mean? Like, don't let me be driving the other way on this road on Sunday, having sold nothing. And the show was a good show. The attendance was a little bit down this year, but I mean, I had a ton of good conversations, and you know, some people that were very, very interested, and you know, just need to work through their buying decision. And I understand that it's not like you're going out to buy a bag of M&Ms. It's a chunk of money. So, you know, at the end of the show, we hadn't, you know, sold a boat. You know, we hadn't actually gotten any money in our hands, and so I thought to myself, I was a little dejected at the moment that I started taking down the booth, to be honest. You know, that it's like, wow, I really am going to have sold nothing. And I took down everything from the booth. The last thing I needed to take apart was this metal tube structure that was supporting the boats that were already loaded up in the trailer. And I took the drape off that structure, and I looked down, and there's a penny sitting in the middle of the floor under that display. And it's like, that display had sat there the whole time, and I don't know how a penny could have possibly gotten under there. But anyway, I swear that was God telling me, I told you, you know, I was listening, and, you know, here's your revenue. So
that's awesome.
I'm with you. Just stick with it. That's the message that I'm taking from that whole experience.
Absolutely.
So
that's awesome.
So, yeah, I wish I had a more complex, like epiphany moment. You know, I can't tell a story of Mike Lindell where, you know, I held a gunpoint down in Mexico. I'm, you know, about to be shot, and I don't have any of those. pretty normal guy or average guy, other than trying to make a boat.
Absolutely, and that's not a bad thing. You know, God can use that story too. So, and like you said, you know, having parents that raise you in that way, it sometimes it does seem like I kind of wish I had that kind of story where I was doing this and God kind of punched me in the face or whatever. It looks awesome, but the people who have been, you know, rock bottom kind of look at the people who have the story of, well, I was just kind of here all my life, and they really, really long for that. So there's definitely merit in the stories of both sides, I believe. So
Yeah.
Absolutely, man. Well, there are some questions that I got to make sure that I ask every guest that comes on the show. And
You bet.
My favorite that I always love hearing all the different answers to, what fishing story or memory means the most to you?
I think it's fishing in Canada with my parents. growing up. We went up there to the same camp several years, and I think I have a lot of really great memories. But if you watch the Paddle and Fin podcast, there's two northern mounted to the wall behind me in that, and that's probably my favorite fishing story or fishing moment. Is we had a year that the weather was just miserable. I mean, like just 40 degrees and rain every day, wind, just like the weather that you just don't want. But the fishing was unbelievable that year. It was like you were just rewarded for going out there and dealing with it. But, one morning going out to the river, the lake we fish is a river system. So there's a river on one end and a river on the other. We ran across the lake, went into the river, and dropped our lines. And we always had a dollar on the first fish. So my mother proceeds to catch a little snake of a northern, and my dad and I were razzing her for that's not worth $1. That's a weak fish. And anyway, put our lines back in the water. We were trolling. So we're troll, and the next 4 fish we caught, and over the course of, I have no idea, no concept of time when I'm fishing like that, but it was basically sequentially the next 4 fish that we caught, which couldn't have been more than a half an hour, were 2 8-pounders, a 10-pounder, and a 12-pounder. It was just like 4 amazing fish, just boom, boom, boom. It was, such a great time. And then we stopped later that morning for lunch, and this is a fact that my dad is not going to appreciate that I shared with the world, but he caught the one fish that's on the wall while we were eating lunch by throwing a crankbait out the back of the boat while we were anchored, and it was just sitting on the surface. Only action was from the current. And so his true talent in catching that fish was catching his pole midair as it was leaving the back of the boat. Which I guess, you got to give him some serious credit for that. But
for sure.
So he caught that fish. Yeah. And he landed the fish, and he's, we're going to have it mounted. It's such a beautiful fish. And so we, at the time, the way you kept a trophy fish was you froze it whole, and you took it to a taxidermist, and they taxidermied it. Not like that today. Today you could get your taxidermy fish without killing the fish, but it was a different time. But then 2 days later, I caught one, and I was like, well, there's a problem. Mine's bigger. So now what are we going to do? And he still to this day says this is bigger. But I told this story in the Paddle and Fin podcast, because you got to say, I don't know, it's just the best fish story I got, so I'm going to go with it. But
that's awesome.
But I talked to my dad since then, and he's like, I heard you say what you said on that podcast. Yeah, well, it's the truth. What am I supposed to do, Dad?
That's awesome. All right, man. Well, so with all of our guests, we always end the show with a segment called "What's Your Favorite?" It's self-explanatory. I'm just going to ask you your favorite in a few different categories. To get us started off, what's your favorite scripture?
I'd say for God so loved the world, He gave His only Son.
Absolutely. As I like to say it, the thesis statement of the Bible.
Yeah.
For sure.
Says it all.
What about a story from the Bible? Is there one of those that's your favorite?
I don't know. I think, just through all the parables, I think those are what speak to me the most. But I guess the story going out when they had caught no fish and going out and filling the nets just to we can keep it relevant to the show. But that one would be very relevant and obviously one that I enjoy.
Absolutely. All right, so what's your favorite fish to catch?
Anything that'll pull back. I absolutely love catching northern pike on spinner baits up north.
Okay.
That is great fun.
Absolutely. So then what's your favorite fish to fish for?
I fish for bass more than anything just because I'm living in Iowa.
Okay.
So
and what's your favorite?
That's the game fish of choice.
Okay. Absolutely. And what's your favorite fish to eat?
Walleye, without question.
One day, I'm gonna get my chance to eat some walleye.
Really, you haven't had walleye?
No, I'm down here in North Carolina, and it's a little bit of a drive to the nearest walleye lake, but I haven't had any yet, but I will.
You come up this way, we can figure something out.
All right.
You can check out the Train Explorer and also some walleye.
Awesome.
You don't have to go far from here.
All right.
Actually, catch them in the Mississippi all the time. I can't seem to figure out how to catch them in the Mississippi, but there's guys that have figured it out. One day I will.
I hear you. All right, so what's your favorite fishing snack?
Fishing what?
Snack.
I'd say Pringles.
Pringles, like original Pringles, or?
Yeah, just pop that can and they're just tailor made. Crack open a Pepsi and some Pringles. That's good stuff.
There you go. That's what I'm talking about.
I was gonna say the politically correct thing and say trail mix, but man, Pringles are better.
For sure. And I won't ask for secret spots or GPS coordinates or anything, but what's your favorite body of water to fish on?
In the world?
Yeah.
Like the whole world. If I could go to one spot, what would it be?
What's your favorite? What's your favorite water to fish that you have fished?
I'd say Lake Nechegona up in Canada, just below the falls, out through the channel.
Okay.
You go there in the fall, and if you like fishing and you have a soul, you're gonna have a good time.
Awesome. And since you mentioned it, what is your bucket list spot?
I really don't. I mean, I've done it, but I'd like to do more of it. So I guess my bucket list is that I'd like to be able to do it with some level of regularity. I really enjoy fishing intercoastal waters down in Florida, the little bit that I've done it.
For sure.
So I'd love to be able to learn how to do it well.
Absolutely.
It's a whole new game with tide, or the tide, and understanding how those affect the fishing. And I think that would be a fun challenge, is to learn how to be a good fisherman down there.
Absolutely. So, getting back to what's your favorite lure to throw? I know you throw lures for a bunch of different species, but what's your favorite?
Crankbaits for covering water, like the most generic.
My man.
Would be crankbaits.
Absolutely. And last but not least, what is your favorite time of year to fish?
Spring. Early spring.
Awesome.
And you get out there and if it's biting, it's big. And, generally that's when the first fish to move are the good ones, big females.
Awesome. All right, man. Well, we are going to start wrapping things up. If you would let us know what's coming up next for you and for Adventure Designs Watercraft.
Yeah, we're going to be going to several sports shows. We're actually headed down to Kansas City next weekend. So just adjacent to the airport there. Then we have a couple weeks off. Unfortunately, one of the weeks we were supposed to be in Chicago, but the show was canceled due to COVID and Illinois' gratuitous number of rules that made the show difficult to have. So,
right.
We'll also be going to Indianapolis to a show in Noblesville, just north of Indianapolis. Let's see, Cedar Rapids, Iowa, Des Moines, Iowa, to the Bassmasters swap meet. And let's see, where else? Canoeacopia. I'm really looking forward to that event. It's a huge event in Madison, Wisconsin, organized by Darren Bush, and he does the Big Gear Show, or is one of the organizers for that huge show. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that. I've never been to that show, and to go to that show the first time as an exhibitor, I'm really looking forward to it. I took a Trident up to their shop in Madison called Rutabaga Sports and talked with him, and he gave some really good feedback. And one of the pieces of feedback was, you got to make yourself a boat that really pops, something that really looks sexy to get people interested. Not everyone wants just the gray boat, and I know that's your style, but some people want some flash. So if you see on my feed the pictures from the Cincinnati show with the green and blue boat, that's the pop that we were talking about. I agreed with him and acted on it. So
absolutely. And did you have any sponsors or supporters or partners, anyone you wanted to say thank you to? I'll give you an open floor for that.
Yeah, I'm very thankful to JK Enterprises who makes the holes for me. The great suppliers that I work with. I work with Dynamic Tube and S&J Tube that make the chair components for the boat, and other flat metal parts. So the goal was not just to make money with a boat. We're supporting local businesses, as close to us here in Muscatine, Iowa as possible. So not looking to outsource things to foreign land. So, and then just, I think some of the dealer partners, that channel has been challenged just due to COVID and everything that they're fighting. They're having some struggles. I think everyone probably thinks that they're having the time of their lives because of people wanting to get out on the water, but they had different struggles with supply chain and inventory and everything else that they're dealing with. But especially a shop in Waverly, Iowa called Crawdaddy's. The owner of that store has been highly supportive, and appreciate everything he's done as far as helping me with the demo day and having a boat in his store through most of the second half of last year. So looking forward to next year and creating new relationships and with customers and supporting them and giving them something unique that will help them catch more fish and have more fun doing it.
Awesome. And if listeners want to follow you on social media, get updates, plug your website, all of that good stuff, let us know where we can find you.
Yeah, the website is AdventureDesignsWatercraft.com. And Facebook is Adventure Designs LLC, or at Adventure Designs LLC. And on Instagram, I'm having a memory lapse on that one. But if you go to the website, there's links to Insta and Facebook, straight from the website, so you can get anywhere you want. And we also have several videos on YouTube. There's also a link to that as well.
Absolutely. And all of those links will also be in the show notes as well for this episode. But I'm going to pull it up here. It is at adventure_designs_watercraft for Instagram.
Awesome. Thank you.
Absolutely. So, Greg, thank you so much for coming on the show. I have really enjoyed it. I definitely understand your the engineer in you. My wife is a structural engineer, and I definitely understand that DNA. So I've had a blast, man, and thank you again so much for coming on.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. It was great talking with you, and it was a good time.
Whether you're a Ned Rig vet or a finesse fishing noob like me, Jade's Jigs is your source for high-quality finesse jigs that raise the bar by being lead-free. Using a tin bismuth alloy not only makes Jade's Jigs eco-friendly, it also makes the jig lighter so you get the same profile with less weight for the fish to feel. Check out jadesjigs.com, that's JADESJIGS.com, to see their full lineup of jigs, styles, and colors. And since you're a Faith and Fishing listener, you can save 10% on your order by using promo code FNF10 at checkout. Another huge thank you to Greg for coming on the show with us. Greg's links will be in the show notes along with Wicked Carp Company and the episode where I got to hang out on Bass and Brews. There will also be a link that says all things Faith and Fishing. That's going to include the website, where to listen to the podcast, the merch store, all of my social media, as well as sponsor links. So be sure to click there if you're trying to find any of that. Be sure to give those ratings and reviews. Let me know what you think. Tell me what you like, what you don't like. And that's going to do it for this episode. Y'all take care, and God bless. Thank you for listening to the Faith and Fishing podcast. Faith and Fishing is produced and hosted by me, Cam Steele, and is sponsored by Jade's Jigs, Get Outdoors Pedal and Paddle, Save Your Outdoors, Atollas, and Mr. B Lure Company. Be sure to give us a rating and a review and to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. That's going to do it for this episode. Y'all take care, and God bless.